We will then open up large parcels of inexpensive land, bring in doctors, psychiatrists, social workers, and drug rehab specialists, and create tent cities where the homeless can be relocated and their problems identified. But we'll open up our cities again, make them livable and make them beautiful. We'll ban urban camping wherever possible. Violators of these bans will be arrested, but they will be given the option to accept treatment and services if they're willing to be rehabilitated. Many of them don't want that.
Do you think Donald Trump is smart enough to realize that he's a fascist and that these great ideas of his are straight out of the fascist playbook? The idea of outlawing homelessness and arresting everyone who refuses to comply, and then giving them the option to get out of jail and be relocated to new tent cities elsewhere, somewhere. Internment camps, basically. That is what he's describing, and maybe he doesn't know history. Maybe he forgets that during the Second World War, the United States forcibly relocated and incarcerated 125,000 people of Japanese descent in 75 identified incarceration sites. And most lived on the Pacific coast in concentration camps in the western interior of the country. And 2/3 of the inmates were United States citizens, as are the homeless on the streets of the United States. Now, United States citizens. That Donald Trump is suggesting that they will be arrested and they will be relocated, because that is his great plan that, comes under his banner of freedom and patriotism, I guess. You see, the importance of teaching history and the importance of understanding history is so that we don't make those same mistakes again. That is the reason that we shouldn't be banning books in schools. This is why America's racist history and the history of slavery is an essential part of the curriculum, because it teaches us what has gone before, how far we have come, and why we don't want to go there again. And, maybe that's why in Republican states some of these historical books are being banned, because maybe they do want it to happen again. Maybe the homeless are just the latest victims. Last week it was the trans community and LGBTQ plus people. And the week before it was young black men being chased or shot in the back by the police, or being executed under the knee of a police officer. My point is that, there always seems to be a victim in this storyline, whether it be Donald Trump's fascism or fascism in what they call the great state of Florida, which is really not a great place to live if you're not a kind of rich, white, male Christian. And if you don't fall under into that category, being cisgender and fitting that perfect Ron DeSantis mold, then there's a chance you'll struggle. People not knowing that they weren't allowed to vote and then being arrested for it. All of these things are out of the fascist playbook. And so this fascism word gets bandied around. It often gets thrown at Joe Biden, because the people throwing it at Joe Biden don't know what it means. They don't have those historical reference points. They don't understand what true freedom is. Because freedom is not telling women that they can't have an abortion. That is not freedom. Freedom is allowing a woman the right to choose. And in the same way that taking somebody's life, somebody who just rang the doorbell and got the wrong address because they went to street and not terrace, and being shot for that. Where's the freedom there? Where's the freedom for a young boy to go to the wrong address? Are we not allowed to make regular mistakes, civic mistakes, social mistakes? So homelessness is the latest thing. And Donald Trump thinks he's kind of invented these great ideas. Like he said recently, he was announcing that he was going to try and build some cities for again, white Christian people to come and live a perfect Donald Trump life. segregated from everybody else. Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for a national divorce between states, and how only the red team belong in the red states and the blue team belong in the blue states. You don't think she thought of that? No. You see, there are others pulling the strings of these Republican mouthpieces, and that is a plan. That is a plan in the senior Republican circles, is to create segregated states. They just used Marjorie Taylor Greene as the messenger. Again, this kind of version, this kind of modern version of fascism. And so you have to decide where you want to live, not in a segregated state, but what kind of a country you want to live in. And if you care for democracy, if you care for the vote, if you care for consensus, for the majority of people to vote for the type of country they want to live in, then choose democracy. And sadly, at the moment, there is only one political party that is advocating for democracy, and that is, coincidentally, the Democrats. People do not worship their leader on the Democrat side in the way that Donald Trump is worshipped like some kind of god. Joe Biden is a temporary torchbearer for the Democratic Party, but he will leave and somebody else will come. And, if Joe Biden was investigated and arraigned and arrested and prosecuted, I can assure you the Democrats would not want him to be their leader. They would want him to be investigated. They would want him to follow the law of the land. But it's not the case with the Republicans. It's not the case with Donald Trump. Trump is likely to be prosecuted for one of these many crimes, and yet he still, by all intents and purposes, is going to be the candidate for president in 2024. And so as a godlike cult leader, he is worshipped by his following. And the Republican Party have shot themselves in the foot because they've chosen a criminal, a known criminal, to be the leader of the party. And there's nothing in the Constitution that stops Donald Trump from running for president from prison. So just consider that. I mean, just think about how close the U.S. is to chaos, to a constitutional crisis, where one of the candidates is twice impeached and arraigned, potentially soon to be prosecuted criminal. And the other is a, former public defender and lifelong public servant. I mean, you can say what you like about Joe Biden. You might think he's too old. You might think his speech impediment is his downfall. But he's not anywhere close to Donald Trump. One of them is somebody who is committed to public service. Donald Trump is just for Donald Trump. Talks about himself in the third person and only cares for people that are nice to him. Doesn't matter who they are. They could be fascist leaders themselves. They could be the likes of Putin or President Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un or any of these kind of dark characters that traditionally have been enemies of the United States. Those are the people that Donald Trump enjoyed the pleasure of. Viktor Orban of Hungary. I mean, seriously? These are the people that he wants to call his friends? So it's a very simple choice, in my view. I mean, I don't even get to vote in this country that I call home. But I care passionately for democracy, and I care passionately that Republicans are represented properly by somebody who cares about the Constitution, about the laws not just of America, but of the wider world. Who understands international trade and diplomacy, who respects the system, because the system is there to keep us safe. And to announce that you're just going to arrest all homeless people and take them off to internment camps and not have people criticize you as a fascist, you're a very foolish person. Because that's not the world that most of us want to live in anymore. Now, of course, homelessness is a problem. And of course, every major metropolis in every country around the world has a homeless crisis because the cost of living skyrocketed and, wages never kept up with inflation. And certainly here in the US, we have an addiction problem and a fentanyl crisis. And, there are pharmaceutical companies and there are dispensaries that have taken responsibility for getting people addicted to these drugs. And they got very rich and they've since paid the price. There is an answer, an explanation for all of these issues if you take the time to read or to listen and to learn. But just to tar all homeless people with one giant fascist brush and announce that you have solved homelessness because you've disappeared people out of society, that is not the America that most people who live in reality want to live in. I'm Anthony Davis. You can hear me every day on the 5-Minute News podcast and on Sundays on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.